Hi, everyone. This is Patrick Donahoe. Thank you for tuning into a special episode. I felt it appropriate to communicate with you guys. The episode that's going to come out this coming Thursday is one I recorded several weeks ago before a lot of what happened this week did, and that's why I wanted to jump on here and connect with you guys. Following this really brief just set of thoughts and where just an overview of where I'm at and what I'm doing. There's an interview I did with Jason Hartman on Friday. Jason's a great friend of mine. He runs the Creating Wealth podcast as well as a number of other podcasts. Very informed individual, one of the most informed individuals, I would say, but also has an even head. He definitely is not a status quo person and loves seeking out the truth. So it was awesome to connect with Jason and get his perspective. So that interview is right after my thoughts. And you can follow him at jasonhartman.com. And additionally, I did a blog post for my company Paradigm Life, specifically for our clients. And so I'll put a link on thewealthstandard.com for you guys to check that out. Also, I want to apologize. We're not going to San Jose, California for the Unleash the Power Within Tony Robbins event. For those of you who had registered and were planning on going, it definitely is an unfortunate set of circumstances, but I know that they will do that event later this year, and so you can build up your anticipation even more. But I wanted to connect with you guys because for those who have been listening for a while. A lot of what we've talked about, and this is also the mission of my company, Paradigm Life, it's to prepare for events like these. Life is not linear, even though we want it to be. We want it to be very calculated. We want these certain things to happen, in sequence, and disruption is challenging. And right now we're facing a lot of that. And I try to, number one, be the best leader I can for myself, for my company, for you as listeners, bringing you practical, implementable advice. And so I believe that what we've been discussing the last couple of years strengthens your resolve, strengthens your mind for circumstances where it could be thrown off kilter in an instant. Just turn on the news, open social media. It's easy to get thrown into fear, but fear and anxiety and panic, these are mediocre states. I believe that they're signals. They're helpful. They're kind of like soldiers, but they're not leaders. Whenever fear and anxiety and panic is leading, there's something wrong, and the results are not going to be good. And that's where I would encourage you is to really understand the balance of your emotions and what's going on right now in order to make the best decisions. I look at quotes like, life happens for you, not to you. The more you value things outside of your control, the less control you have. The one who follows the crowd will usually go no further than the crowd. The one who walks alone is likely to find themselves in places no one has been before. Right now, I believe it's an incredible opportunity for humanity. As you guys have listened to the past couple of podcasts where a lot of what's going on right now was anticipated by a few speakers at the Tony Robbins Platinum Partners Finance event. So it should be no surprise to you, but it's still a surprise to me. I read and listen and hear a lot of opinion and perspective, and sometimes the negative the negative type of news doesn't really resonate as much as the positive, optimistic news. And I'm not trying to look at the world. You may say to yourself, "Oh, I have rose-colored glasses, and I'm uninformed, and I'm not a realist." And that's your opinion, and I totally respect that. I feel that regardless of circumstances, okay, the one control that I have is my mind and the state that I'm in. And I realized long ago that showing up in a certain state, a state of fear, a state of scarcity, it impacts those around me, those that I love, and it also impacts my judgment and my ability to make a decision. And so that's where I'm at, and a lot of things that we're doing. One of the steps that I took for my company, and we have almost 50 people here at our office. We went completely mobile. We're going to be 100% mobile starting today, and I did that not as panic, but I did that because I realized that my team they have loved ones, they have those that they have stewardship over, specifically kids that most of the school systems here in Utah have been canceled, right? So I did it so that we would maintain continuity, so we would maintain the ability to do business, to keep them employed, to keep their heads right, so they have a sense of certainty, so that they can perform their duties adequately and in good spirit. And it's been incredible, man. I'm like emotional thinking about my team and how amazing they are, and how we were able to rally so quickly. But now I'm going to speak just another minute or so on what I'm doing, what's going on, and then it'll cut to the interview I have with Jason Hartman, the kind of joint interview that we did. And then I'm going to be a little bit more active this week. I wouldn't be surprised if even another podcast came out this week, a special episode. But I'm at a point where I look at the current opportunity as an opportunity for humanity to grow. I look at it as an opportunity for me to grow. I look at it as an opportunity for the country to grow. I believe we've been experiencing prosperity for a really long time, whether you want to call it genuine prosperity or uh, uh, a false sense of prosperity, artificial prosperity. That's up to you. But I look at how individuals have been, partaking in life in a very abundant sense. And sometimes, you don't value that as much. And typically, the other side of the spectrum, experiencing that is what's going to enhance and magnify the value you have for life, for relationships, for work, for convenience, for technology. And I believe it's a great way for us to grow. The second thing is, I believe this is a big business opportunity. I realize that there are some businesses that don't operate the right way. It impacts their customers, it impacts employees, and there's situations like these where businesses are no longer around. And what that does is it provides massive opportunity for that capitalistic, entrepreneurial mind that people have to solve problems and make things even better. I believe there is tremendous disruption in the supply chain where there's lots of reliance on China and their resources to provide in part for most of the goods and services that we use on a daily basis. I don't think that's healthy. I believe that oftentimes when things are disrupted like that, they will strengthen, whether we bring in new technologies here, whether we bring in different sources of resources. And I won't go down that rabbit trail. But the idea is this helps to become stronger, and it helps to bring out the entrepreneurial side of people, because these are opportunities where there's tremendous challenge and problem. But what that means is that we can find solutions. We've done it before as a society, and that's what I would encourage you. These are times where you can really understand yourself better, understand and see how strong you are, especially from a psychological standpoint, because there are going to be opportunities for you to lead in your company. Okay, step up and be the voice of reason, the voice of leadership, the voice of inspiration, influence. You have that opportunity now because most people will not step up when times are difficult. That is a huge opportunity for everyone, whether it's in your family, whether it's in your business, whether it's in your community. And the one thing I would encourage, the one universal thing that I believe if you do, you will have tremendous results, which is the mindset of seeking to add value in any way possible. Whether there's financial remuneration, whether it's just the sense of knowing you made a difference. But right now, there is a huge opportunity to add value and to find ways in which you can help a company, find ways in which you can turn a company around, find ways to lead inside of a company, get promoted. There are opportunities right now to grow and for you to step up. And I would encourage you to put those glasses on, look at the world that way, because there's tremendous opportunity. There's certain things that we can't control. Do we know the extent of the spread and the impact it's going to make? We don't. But those are things that we really can't control. We can control our sphere, how healthy we keep ourselves, how healthy we keep our bodies, our minds. I think our mind, keeping that pure, keeping that healthy, clear, has a huge impact on your body. So control what we can control, and then as far as things we can't, right? It's recognize that it's happening for us. It's happening us to really allow us to find ways in which we can add value, make a difference, be a leader, be an influence. And I'll end with this. There's a reason. You guys can see behind me. So to my, let's say, I'm trying to think of how you would see this, but on over one of my shoulders is Wayne Gretzky, and if you guys are watching on video, and I'll discuss him first. Wayne, I have that up on my wall for a reason. I love hockey. I don't have it up there for hockey though. I have it up there because Wayne Gretzky did what others did not. He was medium build, medium strength, medium speed, okay, medium height. However, he skated to where things were going, not where they were. The crowd goes to where things are. Those that see opportunity go to the location of where it's going. He skates to where the puck is going, not where the puck is. That's his famous quote. Okay? That pertains to life. Right now, the crowd is going one direction. Go another direction. Okay, the second, I'm gonna have to tweak my camera here a little bit, but let me see if I can point up. So right up there is a picture of the dream team. Okay, the miracle on ice hockey team, and the reason why I have that up there, okay, and I have it over here. You guys can see. Let me kind of point over here if you're watching on video. Right, I was able to meet Jim Craig, and he signed a jersey for me. That's a little picture right there. Okay, here's the reason is not because they won the gold medal. It's and beat the Soviet Union. I have it up there because the game they played. If you guys want to go, maybe you guys have some time in your hand. Go watch the movie Miracle. But the game before the Olympics was against the Soviet Union, and everybody was incredibly surprised why Herb Brooks would schedule something like that, the coach. And what connected to me is he did it because he wanted his team to experience tremendous adversity because he knew how adversity strengthens. And I guarantee, well, I can't guarantee, but I'm confident that if they had not played that game in advance, they would not have stepped up to the level that they did when they beat them in the silver. I think it was not the silver medal round, but the semifinals right before they went to the gold medal round. That adversity strengthened. That's where I believe we're at right now. We have an opportunity to use this adversity to grow. Use this adversity to find opportunities, to be a leader, to stand up, to influence, to be a voice for good, a voice for humanity. And that takes a lot. It takes some courage. Okay? It takes some tenacity, but I know you can do it. If you guys have been listening for a long time, you listen for a reason. I know that type of personality. That's mine. And I believe that these are the moments where we shine. These are the moments that we've been preparing for. All the seasons we've done over the last couple of years, it's for these moments. So friends, I'm sorry I couldn't see you in San Jose, but listen, I'm hoping that the content, the information has made a difference for you, and it allows you to take this challenging set of circumstances, this adversity, and thrive through it, because I know you can. All right, that's it. I might be back here a little bit later this week. We'll see. But I wish you the best. Stay healthy in your mind. Stay healthy in your body, and be a force for good for those who are having a rough time working through this challenging situation. Okay, everyone, that's it. Best of luck. Best wishes. We'll talk to you next time. Now enjoy the interview with my good friend Jason Hartman.
Pat, it's great to be talking to you again. There are absolutely wild events going on in the world. This is sort of a once in 100 years type of thing. The last time the world saw anything like this and hopefully this won't be anywhere near as significant as the Spanish flu in 1918. Um, what do you make of current events?
What do I make of current events?
Big
Well, first off,
question.
Jason, it's
Yeah,
awesome. Yeah, it's awesome
yeah.
to be with you too. And I look at uh, what's going on, and I try to step out of it. I look at the crowd, and I've never been part of kind of the crowd, and so I try to look at things from a different perspective. But it's interesting because it's still rolling, it's still rolling out, but it's going quick, and it's having a massive impact on people's psychology, their emotional state of being. And I would say where I've gravitated toward is not necessarily anxiety behind the actual coronavirus itself, but the impact it's going to have on the economy. That's really where I'm focusing my attention, because I look at the 70,000 plus people that have already recovered from it, and I think it's going to pass through a lot of people, but then ultimately they'll recover from it. I don't think people are looking at the end result. They're always in the here and now in the short term, and I think the short term is going to be fixed from a health standpoint. That's just my opinion and my perspective from what I've gathered.
And we
But I
all
look at
hope you're
the
right.
long term impact.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be incredibly challenging, but also in the long term, really good.
Hmm. So when you say that, you're talking about the economy, I think, right?
Yeah, I would say local economy, the way of doing business, the supply chains. Uh, you know, I,
Yeah.
China and what they're, how that's going to impact like the Belt and Road initiative. I mean, it's going to be, yeah, it's going to be really interesting the impact of this. I think it's going to be decades, and but I think it's a really good thing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so certainly on the really good side, it is causing companies to diversify their supply chains, which is a good move. Um, it sort of hastens the Trump platform, if you will, which is bring jobs back to the U.S. Now, this is from a
Yes.
U.S. perspective we're talking, of course, but we both on both of our podcasts have listeners around the world, and so I think that really. Sort of brings that issue to the fore. Before this, we had a lot of trade war discussions, and this has taken over the news. But I think it really it makes a good case for countries, uh, companies, individuals, families to become more self sufficient and not reliant on outsourcing. We've all been outsourcing companies, countries, people because it's convenient, it's inexpensive, and there's something to be said for not having so much reliance on that. And also, the other thing that we're finding when we see these supply shortages is the whole modern concept of just-in-time delivery and just-in-time manufacturing. Um, you know, it's great because that keeps inventory costs way down, but it also means you can't walk into a supply room and get more supplies because everything's just on demand, right? And
Yep.
so that's why there aren't enough masks. There's certainly a toilet paper shortage. I mean, all this crazy stuff is because of that. So I think that'll be reassessed. And Pat, you know what I think is also good? I think the handshake is going to go out of style. The I think
Are we gonna do like the French like kiss on the cheek now, or what?
no, I think that one might be worse, but I like that one though. Yeah.
Well, it
Uh,
depends on who you're kissing.
well, that's fair enough. Fair enough. But I think the Japanese bow. I think the Japanese have it right with a very polite, courteous bow is a good one. Yeah. We'll see. So, what are you seeing in the insurance business, and how has that been acting? What's the vibe from your customers and prospects the past few weeks since this really became a huge story?
Well, it's a good question. I would say, we're in a very simple. I'm in a simple business, right? And in my business, there's not a lot of volatility, and that's why I chose it, right? I chose to go down this path in 2008, 2009, just because I saw how much it would have helped people, right, who were going through extreme volatility and adversity. So, this has been my message for a long time. Obviously, I'm an investor. I've invested with you before. We have advocated different alternative investments. At the same time, our big thing is to establish a foundation of certainty for times like these, because that provides the wherewithal, the perspective, so that you can look at
the disruption, which is really out of anybody's control. You can't control it, but what you can do is capitalize on the opportunity. And I see just massive opportunities for those that keep their head straight, that are focused, and are able to, really look at where the opportunities are and are going to be. And it's not necessarily something to jump on right now, but when you have liquidity, typically in times of uncertainty and chaos, you have tons of opportunities that present themselves to you if you have cash and liquidity.
I posted on my Facebook yesterday that we being everybody in the world, is about to witness the biggest money printing extravaganza in world history. It is, I mean, I don't know what's coming. None of us really do. But I think the kind of bailouts, the kind of stock purchase programs, and welfare state programs that will come out of this will make the Great Recession look like those were small bailouts. We thought those numbers were big when it was a trillion here, a trillion there. I think we're going to see much bigger things now because this is a much bigger deal. Whole segments of the global economy are literally just going into hibernation mode.
So Jason, what will be the result of that, right? Because I agree. I think that I mean, it's the natural response. It has to be, right? Because the Fed has been that saving grace of when things go sideways. They come in and artificially manipulate, pump things up, keep things stable. They did it with our podcast a few months ago on what they were doing in the repo market to right now. I mean, that is going to be the solution. So my question to you is, all right, that's going to happen. Okay. What is the result of that? Or what are the results of that?
Well, I did a couple of shows recently on my podcast about this very rare situation that we're experiencing, and that is supply demand shock. Most of the time, you don't have both of those together. Now, everybody knows that the basic rule of economics is supply and demand, right? When supply is short and demand is high, you have inflation, prices go up. When supply is plentiful and demand is low, then you have deflationary pressures because there's just too much supply in the market. So everybody starts lowering their price of whatever their widgets are to try and sell their inventory. And what we're moving into is a kind of a very rare scenario where we have supply and demand shock. So the Fed with their monetary stimulus and the government with fiscal stimulus can try to create demand by pumping money into the market and making money cheap, right? If money's plentiful, meaning it's easy to borrow, interest rates are cheap or free, or you're literally in a negative interest rate environment where you're actually getting paid to borrow money, which is arguably what we're in now, and even what we've been in for a little while, then there's a wealth effect to that, right? People think, well, why not buy stuff? But the interesting and rare thing we're about to see, and I mean, we're seeing it in just minor ways. If you go to the market, and I've been to a couple of markets, Costco, and then the regular supermarket, there's no paper products. I mean, Pat, listen, I host a survival podcast, the Holistic Survival Show, right? And I started that during the Great Recession in about 2008. And I interviewed hundreds of preppers and survivalists. And never did I think paper products would be the thing. Not one of them said that on my show. They all said, well, food, water, maybe if they're more radical, guns and ammunition. You heard all of that stuff, medical supplies, but you didn't hear toilet paper and paper towels being the shortage, right? So that's the supply shock. And as we have seen, industries.
So are you saying that it's not going to make an impact? Are you saying that as they do stimulus, it's not going to have the impact they think it's going to have?
It's not going to have the impact they think it's going to have. Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. It will have some impact. It will soften the landing, but when there's no supply of products to buy because the workshop of the world, China, has gone to sleep, then what can you do with that,
Yeah.
right?
Well, so I'm gonna fill you in on something
Sure.
that I didn't tell you before.
Okay.
So about a month and a half ago, I was at the Tony Robbins, the Platinum Partners Finance event up in Sun Valley,
Hmm.
and there were two speakers. One of them, it was fascinating, and I'll share with you a couple of the statistics from his presentation. But it's Eric Prince, who was the former CEO of Blackwater,
Right.
and he sold that, became a billionaire, and now just does a lot of investment around the world. And he basically called everything that we're experiencing right now.
Hmm.
And I look at the stimulus, that's a given. But looking again at what his biggest concern is the reliance that we have on China for our supply chain. And supply chain is basically where either parts or wholes of goods and services that we use are reliant on some aspect of the Chinese manufacturing hub. And so get these statistics, right? Textiles and apparels, 54% of the world's global production is textiles and apparels.
Wow.
Tech goods, okay, 46%.
You're saying this is the percentage that comes from China.
Correct, right?
Okay.
42% chemical products, rubber and plastic, 38%, machinery, 38%. This is where it gets into your stuff, right? Household goods is only 35%. And the threat that China has been making over the last couple of days, right, with regards to the drugs, right, drugs that people take, is only 29%. If I look at that and I'm like, wow, that's significant, right? 29%, but like 54%, right?
Yeah.
Over half. So that's the impact that I think that it has not manifested yet. I think we see it with empty shelves in supermarkets or Costco or Sam's Club. At the same time, like I don't think we've seen what's going to happen. But I also think there's a really good thing, and this is what Eric Prince said as a result of his presentation, is that the U.S. is fat and happy, right? We have relied on cheap products, cheap production,
right,
for far too long, and we are getting lazy. And he said, the best thing for a person that's lazy, fat, and happy is to get told that they're having a heart attack and they need to
they got to change their ways. They got to change their ways.
And lose weight. They got to change their ways. They got to be more efficient. They got to, and I think that's what's going to ultimately be the positive outcome from this. At the same time, I think there's going to be some interesting months ahead of us, and just in relation to navigating through the supply chain issues and how it's going to impact businesses. And that's where, I think we're experiencing the same thing right now when you have schools that are shutting down. The professional sports are shutting down. You have, here in Utah, like church, we shut church down. We shut, events down, limited to, less than 100 people, right? There's disruption. This disrupts just, the economic machine. And I believe that is what's to be concerned about, because that, as you said, is going to decrease demand big time. And also what you said, decrease supply. So I look at, money going into the economy, injecting. It may have some short term, like, getting juiced, with a bunch of caffeine before you go to the gym, but it's going to have a big crash.
Yeah, right. It's and what's interesting is that as far as real estate goes, I think I don't know. It depends, because none of us know now. That's the disclaimer we all have to use, right? We just don't know. But here's a possible scenario: is that the builders pull in their horns. They really curtail their building activity, their construction activity, which is already, there's this huge shortage of housing. And there'll be this sort of perfect inflection point coming where the interest rates will be the cheapest. There will be enough inventory to buy for investors or even homeowners. And then as we start to come out of the inevitable recession. By the way, folks, we're going into a recession. Okay, so get over it. And that only means, 2 consecutive quarters of flat or declining GDP. Okay, so we're going to have a recession. Okay, we're on the verge of it. But as we come out of that, there will be this certain sort of perfect inflection point that some courageous people who, in a climate of fear, are willing to go buy and be contrarians and invest and, theoretically risk, right? Where there's just going to be an even harsher, worse shortage of housing than there is now. And I think you'll see that shortage in a lot of other things too, not just housing. But I don't know if they can pump enough money in the system. Maybe the builders will keep building. Who knows? It just remains to be seen. Pat, there's one other thing though I think we should address. And I'm sure you've seen a lot of this on social media. The first one you have is what people are calling flu-tards. Have you heard that one? That's people who are comparing this to the flu. And
because people are getting up in arms about it not being.
They're in denial. Okay, those people are out of their mind. This really is different. Okay, and it's much more serious. So there's the flu-tards, but then there's also the people that are doing this doom and gloom mathematics. And viruses do grow exponentially, and that is definitely a concern. But they get to a certain point where the growth does not happen exponentially anymore. Because
that's why you have an S curve in economics, right? No tree grows to the sky. There's eventually correction.
Right. Absolutely. That's a perfect comparison. And so what happens is, number one, as the news gets worse and worse, more people self-quarantine, or there's martial law imposed and people are forced to quarantine. So then the rate of infection drops dramatically. And also, infected people going around interacting with other infected people, that doesn't do anything. It doesn't increase the number of infections, because when you get to a certain point where a lot of people are infected, and remember that not everybody infected even gets sick. Many don't even know it, okay? And that's the problem. We just don't have testing in the US yet. So those exponential curves, they happen for a little while, but then they really tail off. Yep. So relax on the doom and gloom, okay? 7 billion people aren't going to die, okay? The world will go on, and hopefully it will be, minimalist amount of damage. So, yeah.
And I'll add to that. I mean, I think first, there's things you can control, and there's things you can't, right? And it goes to that Stoic quote of, the more value you put on things they're outside of your control, the less control you have. So here it's maintaining your health. If you get it, you get it, and it's figuring out how to get cured from it. There are many people, tens of thousands of people, that have gotten it and are good now. The thing with me is what I always try to look at. And this is one of the reasons, like in my office, I have the a picture of Wayne Gretzky, right? Because
I love that.
He was the average guy, right? Average build, average strength, right? But he was the best one out there because he did what everybody else didn't do. Follow the crowd, follow where things are, as opposed to taking a step out, right? And I somehow found my way onto this text chain with Ray Dalio. I think there's a couple hundred people on there, and he's been texting a lot lately, in regards to how you make decisions, right? So I'm going to read one of them, which I think is really important.
That's great.
The first one is he prioritized the weighing the value of additional information against the cost of not deciding. And that's a big thing, right? Where you have to look at, where you are, what you know, and what compels you to make a decision. And typically it's more unconscious than it is conscious. And so the idea is okay, if you're compelled to make a decision, all right, now it's figuring out if there's other information, other perspective that you can use to potentially form another opinion. And this takes a lot of humility, right? Because we all pride ourselves in a sense of being smart and understanding things and using big words. At the same time, right, that's super destructive, because if you cling to that, hopefully people don't think that they know everything. And it's, trying to find the other side of the argument that allows you to have a fully formed perspective. And at that point, your reaction is more of a response than it is a reaction of an unconscious, carnally driven reaction. So I think it's huge right now I think he's saying this because there's so much going on, and a lot of it's just out of people's control, but yet they get sucked into it. And that fear, that emotion, it compels you to make bad decisions, right? Yeah. And there may be a good decision in there, but it's like the exception rather than the rule. So the idea is to, really, like we're talking about, do some research, understand both sides of the argument, see what the worst case scenario is, but see what the best case scenario is. Because I think all of this is healthy. It's like, getting the crap kicked out of you sometimes, right? Wakes you up when you get punched in the face. It's the whole Mike Tyson quote, right? Then you look at things different. And I look at right now, and I think this is far past due for our society, where we look at how fortunate we are to have the luxuries and the technologies and the efficiencies. At the same time, it's made us lazy,
Mhm.
right? It's made us cling to these like emotional things and trends. But here's the thing, Jason, and this is what I became aware of yesterday, is I believe it's going to get worse. And here's why. I think there's been like this built up energy of conflict. I mean, I think people naturally seek conflict. That's why sports are popular. That's why any form of competition, even movies, stories, right? People need conflict. Without conflict, stuff is boring.
Sure.
And
Yeah,
there's
of
been this
course.
like global conflict that hasn't really occurred for a really long time. And there's this
Right.
built up energy. But here's the thing: is now that it's kind of manifesting, okay, you have removed sports, you've removed like movies are being put off, right? And that's where I see just a continuation of this hype, which I believe is going to accentuate or magnify the challenge. But at the same time, like this is where all the opportunity is for those that keep a level head
Right.
and see where there's inefficiencies, see where there's opportunities to add value. And I think it's going to be the greatest period of time in history to become successful, wealthy, but at the same time add massive value to the world. And
That's what happens every single
it's
time.
the
And you
creative
know what?
destruction.
We
Creative
used to,
destruction.
it's Joseph Schumpeter's creative destruction, absolutely, Pat. And everybody during the Great Recession, well, not everybody, but the few people in the know were looking back and looking at the history from the Great Depression 7 decades earlier. And they were saying, look at all these big companies that started out of the Great Depression. Look at J. Paul Getty became the world's first billionaire during the Great Depression. And now you don't need to look back 70 years. You can look back 10 years and you can see probably people maybe you yourself listening, you made a lot of money coming out of the Great Recession
Yep.
just 10 years ago. And I know many people that did that, and their businesses became much stronger. They, as people, became much stronger. And this is what always happens, failure, hard times, whatever it is that do not destroy you, strengthen you. And this ultimately will be good for the world. Yes, there will be tragedies out of it. I don't want to minimize that by any means, but there will also be very significant silver linings that come out of this. So, yep, good thinking, Pat. What else
Do you
should we
see?
wrap it up
Like, what
with?
else do
Yeah.
you see? I mean, I'm curious about because you view the world. That's why I love you, Jason. But you view the world much differently than most, and I love those perspectives.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
what else are you seeing? And this is more self for me. But what else are you seeing?
Well,
It,
you know what I have been postulating is that the idea that this is a prelude to something that probably was going to happen anyway,
yeah.
and the really hardcore libertarians will hate this, but interestingly, some of them actually agree with it. The Silicon Valley style libertarians think that we need a universal basic income. And I think that this is going to simply expand the government's role in the handout world. I think we may see some sort of national equivalent to the Section 8 housing program. We will see a lot of aid doled out by the government. We will see like I said, the largest, biggest money printing extravaganza in world history. And we may see a national type of housing assistance program. We may see a universal basic income. And the reason I say this may have had to come anyway is because of the very significant automation and robotics and AI and the way that is going to change the world, and how a lot of workers will just not be able to retool from that, at least not quickly at all. It's not like the past. And I understand that the only job that has actually disappeared from the economy in the past 50 years is one, there's only one job that's disappeared with all the automation and technological advances we've had, Pat, and that is elevator operator. All of those are self-operated nowadays. There's no elevator operators anymore, but everything else is still there. However, it's really hard to understand how those jobs will still be there this next phase that we're moving into, of autonomous vehicles, of articles that can be written by computer, sports scores, newscasting, songs and poetry, all done by AI. Okay, I think this time it really is different, but maybe I'll be wrong about that. But I think that's going to be the push toward a universal basic income.
Yeah, I find it, I find it interesting. Again, coming from the libertarian, perspective that I always try to cling to and use as a check and balance to what's going on. I see just a lot of government intervention, and in the end, it's the whole Kiyosaki, A student or C students work for A student, or A students work for C students, and B students work for the government.
Right.
The government is like mediocrity. I look at, and example is here in Utah. Like yesterday, they had the governor was there and the lieutenant governor, and they were telling people what not to do, and I'm like, okay, if you want to influence people's behavior, right? Don't tell them what not to do. It's like telling an 8-year-old, don't do this, don't do this. And they're just going to go do it. And one of the things they were saying is, don't go to Costco and, be the person that buys those last packet of toilet paper and fights everybody else.
Don't worry. You can't be that person because they don't have any toilet paper. Okay, go ahead.
And that's one of the things where it's really interesting how they're handling it. And at some point, this leads to my other, question for you. I'm not sure how much you have really thought through, the change in demographics, because right now, you have a lot of old people that are in positions of leadership, positions of influence, mainly in the government, right? And it seems like they're losing their mind. They're not keeping touch with reality, and I wouldn't expect them to. And at what point, right, is the jig up, right? At what point are we like, okay, 60-year-old, 70-year-old, like, I don't think you know what the hell you're doing. Do you think there's a point in time where there's a change of guard of sorts from the old generation to the young generation? And do you think that is what's going to, compel the universal basic income or an increase in assistance, or do you think it's just going to be similar to the past, where just you have these older individuals that are trying to pad the pocket of other individuals in their constituency just to get reelected?
So you're talking about in the political realm or in general?
I would say political and social.
Yeah. Gosh, that's such a complicated set of questions there. Of course, the real answer is I don't know. Okay, but one of my podcast guests says that coronavirus is a bomb aimed at baby boomers, and number one, because their health is weaker. Given immune systems of younger people are generally stronger. So that's one thing. But you've got this issue of like inheritances that will happen and that transfer of wealth. So it's just very hard to tell.
Yeah. Is he saying that from a nefarious perspective, or is he saying that this is kind of just like the natural order of things?
Yeah, kind of maybe nefarious, but not. I don't know. There's all those conspiracies that this is a man-made virus, and it's weaponized and all that stuff. He wasn't really saying that, but who knows? It's just very hard to tell. I think the problem is everybody's talking about this, but it's just too early to tell. There used to be this weatherman on TV with a famous thing, TETT, too early to tell. And that's exactly where we are, folks. It's just too early to tell. But the thing we do know is that the global economy, huge swaths of the global economy have gone to sleep. They're in hibernation, and probably more things will be in hibernation. And that is going to have a huge impact on pushing us into a recession, because will the people that work for all those people be paid? Will they get handouts? The Trump administration has proposed getting rid of the payroll tax. Well, that's fine if you have payroll and you have a job, but it doesn't help you if you don't have a job. Nope. So I think what has to happen is either or maybe both, a nationwide housing assistance program, like a Section 8 concept, or universal basic income. Or maybe they'll call it like Bush did years ago. It'll just be a tax refund, and everybody just gets a check from the government saying, "Here's some of your taxes back." But there's going to be stimulus for sure, and the people who are willing to buck the trend and be courageous and buy cheap assets. And remember, when it comes to real estate, part of the cheapness of the asset is not necessarily what you think, like a price reduction. It's that the fact that the money to buy that asset is so cheap or really free, and that's the super low interest rates, just another form of stimulus. So yeah.
So where do you see the biggest opportunities through all of this as it all shakes out?
Well, I think income property is going to be a great asset class. No surprise that I say that. Many people think it's self-serving, but the reason it's not is because it truly is the multidimensional asset class, and there's a return policy that comes with it, and that return policy is the one that millions of people took advantage of during the Great Recession. They just said to the lender, "Look, I'm not paying. I'm going to give the property back, or modify my loan and make it easier for me to afford this, or put a moratorium on mortgage payments." And you're already seeing talk of that in the news media. In fact, it may be a government mandate. So there's just when you have a multi-dimensional asset class like that, you have so many options, and that really, really benefits investors. I'm starting to think that I'd actually give some stock tips, because these stocks are looking so cheap, but they're going to get cheaper. And here's two things, I think, fundamental, very basic things about the stock market that are important. Number one is the value or the price of the stock or the price of the index, like the S&P, versus GDP. If you look at that over the past few decades, you'll know when stocks are cheap and when stocks are overvalued. And also just the very basic price to earnings ratio. Those two things, I think, are the most important metrics. And if you look at stock prices versus GDP, stocks are still expensive, okay, historically. And PE ratios are still high. So not yet, okay, too early to be the vulture capitalist and the bottom feeder on that. But it's looking interesting. It's getting tempting, but I think it'll get a lot more tempting.
Maybe another question along that vein. So let's say that you could have done one thing different in 2007, right? Leading into what we all experienced, 2008, 2009, 2010. Like what's the one thing you would have done differently?
Oh gosh. All those properties I let my clients buy, I should have bought them for myself. Okay. That's for sure. Or I should have snapped up a lot more of them, and I didn't. So that's my regret.
So acting sooner than you did.
Yeah. Just being sort of busy, being the shoemaker who's making shoes for everybody else, but whose kids are walking around barefoot. I should have bought more properties. Definitely. I bought some. I mean, yeah, I've got a significant real estate portfolio in different companies I have, but not enough. Should have done more.
Maybe another question. So yeah, I'm obviously having some liquidity, having cash, and acting when you know that something is on sale. But that's the other question. When you look for opportunity, I think there's a couple ways to do it, right? The first opportunity, right, is to figure out how can you personally add value, right? Add value to this person, add value to that person, whether it's in your business, your job, et cetera, is always having that mindset. But the second thing is really looking for something on sale. And I look at some phraseology I've heard over and over and over again for the last couple of years is the world's going to go on sale. How do you determine when something is on sale?
Well, just in the stock market, I just gave you that answer. Okay.
Let's say it's something else.
Okay. So with real estate, it's when the money is so cheap that you're just getting paid to borrow. Okay. Or when the price is so low that the rent to value ratio is just so desirable you can't. And I'll give you an example. During the Great Recession, okay, we had rent to value ratios of some of our properties that were 1.8. What I mean is a $100,000 property that would rent for $1,800 a month. That was
Wow.
absolutely incredible. You can't get anywhere close to that on a quality property today. Okay. That's a good quality property with that. And we saw many that were 1.4, $100,000 property renting for 1,400 a month. Now, $100,000 property, if you can get 1,000 a month, you're doing great. Okay. But the money is also cheaper now too. So you can't just go by the rent to value ratio, because the financing is less expensive now than it was then. So what you want to do is arbitrage opportunities. That's the way any investor in any asset class wins. So if the price is cheap, stock up and be willing to pay the higher cost of money during the cheap price time. Okay. And then refinance out of that. And that's one of the things I love about income property is you're never stuck with a deal. You can renegotiate it all along. In other words, you can buy the property with at some point for a cheap price with expensive money and bite the bullet for a few years. Then when that money gets cheaper, you refinance it. And now you've got cheap money on a property you bought at a cheap price. So that's fantastic, right? And right now, properties aren't super cheap, but the money is super cheap. And so you're really in essence buying the cheap loan more than the cheap property, because the property, they're in our linear boring markets, not the high flying cyclical markets on the east and west coast. The properties are still reasonably priced. Okay, they're not dirt cheap like they were, but they're reasonable, and the money is super cheap. So one of those two elements, if you have it working for you, you're doing great.
So I'm gonna do another question. Sorry, I keep adding layers onto this.
Yep.
But going back again to the 2007, 2008, you purchasing more than you actually did. I'm assuming that you had some reservations, some fears, some anxieties. Like what was going through your head at that time that maybe now you understand things differently, so that when fear is occurring, in the near future, that you would be able to step outside of that, see opportunity, and then capitalize on the opportunity by making a decision. So, what's been your learning
Yeah,
process through this last go around?
I don't know that I was really that fearful. I
Okay.
was just sort of busy. I was just busy serving clients. And for a while, the market was quite slow. And then, and that's because Fannie Mae limited the number of loans people could have, and investors wanted to buy more properties, but they just couldn't, because they could only have 4 financed properties for quite a while there. And when business started to pick up, we were just busy serving customers that were purchasing more properties. And I sort of wasn't paying enough attention to my own stuff, and I should have been out there aggressively buying more. So it wasn't really fear. And well, I can tell you one other big mistake. I remember one of my clients and we've done several deals together on larger properties. I remember in 2010 we were really looking to buy self-storage facilities, mobile home parks, or apartment complexes. And we had written approximately 80 letters of intent and sent them out to owners. And just stupidly, we thought all the owners were being just completely unreasonable, and they had buyers lined up at the door. Everybody was buying suddenly. And this was only 2010. Okay. So we were, just coming out of the Great Recession. Okay. And we thought they were being too greedy and the prices were too high. Looking back in the rearview mirror, those properties were cheap. We should have bought them all. And the same was true with residential, with single family homes. Same thing.
What would have been a statistic or a variable that would have made you actually send out the letter of intent, get what's it called, like a response or a counter offer,
Yeah.
and then pull the trigger on it? Is there a certain variable that if you had, you would have made that decision?
Well, it's all perspective. At the time, it felt like there was so much buyer competition. There
Got
were
it.
these people were starting to see, and remember, they were coming out of the same thing everybody else was, where the market was kind of dead for a couple of years. And then suddenly it's like they were starting to turn on the faucet. The buyers were out there, they were making offers, and the sellers started thinking, oh, well, I got a hot commodity here, so I need to really be firm on the price. And at the time, it seemed expensive. It always does. That's the way it always feels. Every asset buyer at every time feels like, why can't I get a better deal? But all you have to do is wait a couple of years and your deal's going to look really good. It just works that way every time. So that's the thing, is to try and keep that perspective. And that's why when you're older and more experienced, you just get better at this stuff, because you can read about it in a book, you can talk to people about it, but there's nothing like being really actually there. And when you were there, you really internalize what it felt like. And then the next time around, you see the opportunities and you're more willing to take advantage of them. Yeah.
So I would say, how are you preparing yourself right now, or is it still early to tell?
No preparation. I'm still looking at deals. Clients are looking at deals, and it's just too early to tell. I couldn't say right now, but stock up on stuff for your house. Have some food, and if you can get it, hand sanitizer and toilet paper, that would be good too.
They fly off the shelves every time they get restocked. So it'll be interesting to see how it all.
Asset classes going.
Well, that's the thing is, when things are scarce, that's when they're valued more. And there's been so much abundance that I don't think people have, like I said, a few moments ago, they just don't value things. And when they start to value things, that's when, capitalism kicks in.
Sure.
Right. Because capitalism always finds a way to, give a person what they want.
Right.
And now that people are valuing things more, and especially things that are made with, in the United States, made with, better, I would say, trade partnerships. Okay. Nobody thinks about that. Nobody knows that the majority of, goods in the U.S., are in part, maybe not in whole, but in part made in China.
Yeah.
But now they'll know. And that's when you have capitalism kicking in and solving problems. But I think the amount of time isn't going to be overnight. There's definitely going to be years of being able to plug these holes. But I think it's healthy. I'm excited for a lot of the the disruption, because I think that helps people value life more, value commerce more, value business more. And I think we'll get through this, and in the long run, it'll be really, really good, and things are going to get even better.
You just said something really interesting before we go, and we'll just wrap it up. But I just want to say one thing. If you have a business, and everybody has a business. If you have a job, you have a business. You are the CEO of the services you sell to your employer. Okay. You got to think like that no matter what.
Yes,
okay?
absolutely.
But if, say, you have an actual, business as a legal entity, right? Really, really, really appreciate your customers, because there may be a time when you think, that customer was difficult. That was a crappy customer, but God, I wish I had that customer back now. Don't be that person. Be grateful for what you have and treat people well, because you never know how that might be your saving grace later. So I would definitely say that. All right, Pat. Hey, thank you so much for the talk. It was great talking with you again about this stuff.
This is fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. We'll talk to you next time.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Jason.